Welcome to the Roots and Branches JJC Alumni Podcast. As the nation's first community college, JJC has played a key role in shaping America's higher education system. Our rich and beautiful history reaches more than a century into the past, forever connecting generations of alumni. I'm Jen Davis, Annual Giving and Alumni Relations Manager, and I will be your host. In each episode, we'll sit down with different alumni to uncover their most cherished memories, hear their inspiring tales, and get their hard-earned wisdom for future wolves. So, if you're ready, let's dive into the roots of our rich history and branch out into the stories that define us on this episode of the Roots and Branches JJC Alumni Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Roots and Branches JJC Alumni Podcast. I'm so excited to switch gears again for this episode and bring up a topic that's really, really important to us here at JJC. In case you don't know, October is Disability Awareness Month. And while it's important to have these recognition months, I think that disability awareness is something that JJC is working incredibly hard to make an important topic all the time, 12 months a year. And I have 2 wonderful guests today that are really going to help me explain just all the great work we're doing here and how all the services we provide to students are helping shape our alumni's educational experience and beyond as they enter their careers. So we have 2 guests today, and the first one is Esli Ramos, and she is a JJC alum and a current student at Lewis University. Esli, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And my second guest is Adam Wouk, and he is the Director of Disability Services here at JJC. Crucial role. Adam, it's great to have you.
Really appreciate to be here today.
Thank you both. So let's get started right off the bat here. We are pretty fortunate at Joliet Junior College to have an office like Disability Services. And Adam, I kind of want to start with you, maybe just to give us a little bit of information about what does your office do? What do they provide for students here at JJC?
So the first thing that we provide is students to have the opportunity to set up accommodations for their classes. And that happens through the lens of the American Disabilities Act. What our office will do is review documentation that students submit about their disability. And then we set up a meeting with those students to have a discussion. And we use the documentation along with the interview process to help determine accommodations that are going to support a student in class. Accommodations can range from extra time on an exam, a note taker, extra time on assignments. These are meant to help mitigate obstacles that disabilities can create for individuals. However, I think it's really important to point out that accommodations are just a slice of the pie that we provide students, because we also recognize that accommodations only go so far. We also have to help students develop other metacognitive skills to be effective academically. And so that could be note-taking, time management, et cetera. So students have the opportunity to meet with us regularly to go over skills and accommodations so they can find success here on campus.
Thank you so much for that explanation, Adam. So, Esli, you decide to come to JJC, and you already know that you are going to need support from an office like Disability Services. So let's talk about that journey. What brought you here, and how did you get connected with Adam and his team?
Yeah, what brought me to JJC was the fact that it was local. It was in the area, and I've heard about it from students and staff that have gone there previously.
Great. And how did you get in touch with the Disability Services Department? Is that something that you became a student here and then sought out?
I actually got in touch with Disability Services the minute I started there. I wanted to look for an office where I could get assistance finding my classes, because I hadn't even been to JJC to learn where my classes were. And being someone who's blind, I wanted to make sure that I at least could find my ways to my classes. So that was one of the main reasons why I started going to Disability Services.
That's great. So you shared with me, in our pre-interview that you suffer from a visual impairment. And so if you want to talk a little bit about what that means and what types of services we were able to help you with here at JJC.
Yeah, so I have a visual impairment called retinitis pigmentosa. And this basically means there are different variations, but of different levels of sight. But for me, I can only see on the peripheral, so on the sides of my eyes, and I can't see further than a foot away from me of what anything is, and everything's blurry. And then I like to say I see what looks like a TV screen when it has a lot of static, and I just see different colors of that. So because of that, I also can't see at night. I have night blindness. And then to help me get around, I use a white cane to help me travel.
I know that you came to Disability Services just hoping for a few things to help you, have people get you to your classes, to make sure that you were able to view and do your homework. But you said that they just went so much more above and beyond. So I'm actually going to let Adam jump in for a second here. And can you tell us, when you met Esli for the first time, you spoke so highly of her. I just want to give a minute to talk about that first interaction.
Well, I think, you did a good job there, Jen, too, of also, I think, highlighting sometimes some of the obstacles that students face when they come to a college campus. And that can be a really overwhelming experience. We recognize how hard it is for students to come forward and to even ask for support and accommodations. One thing that's important to recognize in a higher ed environment is that students have to choose to come to the disability office and tell us and give us the documentation of their disability in order to get support and help. That step into our office itself is a very daunting one, and it can be very hard, let alone trying to navigate college and using these accommodations, whether it's like Esli has to get around the college or things you're using in a classroom, whatever it might be, using those at the same time, also trying to find yourself, trying to fit in with everybody else, right? There are so many dynamics at play that I think can make college intimidating for people with disabilities to the point where they
Absolutely.
don't. I think about Esli, what really stands out is her ability to persevere. There, all of us have been in different parts of our life where we've faced a variety of different obstacles that have beaten us down and sometimes stopped us from pursuing something. That has never been the case with Esli. She was a student here. I started in 2020. She was already a student here, and everybody had raved about her. And when I met her and started to work with her, I could see exactly why. That perseverance is something that I think that has really helped her specifically overcome and not let those obstacles stop her. Because as you can see, her being at Lewis today shows the level of achievement because of that perseverance.
Yeah, that's something that she brought up right away too, was that you guys helped with the services and support, but then you also just really encouraged her to do more, that she could do more on campus. In fact, by the time you were in your second year here, right, Esli, you became the president of the Disability Awareness Club, right? What did you love about that club? What do you remember? What were some of the favorite things that you did in that club?
Well, can I actually go back and talk about how, I was part of it before I became president, and it was in person. And then to see the college go online, I really wanted to keep Disability Awareness Club alive and still being involved. And I actually think by us still continuing the club, because I believe some clubs actually slowed down or stopped during the pandemic. So to see Disability Awareness Club want to continue, I really wanted to make sure we kept everyone involved and still spreading disability awareness. I also noticed that during the pandemic, we actually had more members join because they had more access to be online, because they couldn't always make it in person because of the lack of rides or just not feeling the greatest. So once I became president, it was all online. So I had to kind of think about not only adjusting myself to having online classes and everything, but making the club continue the mission and keeping everyone involved, as well as seeing everyone happy. I always try to make sure I made the meetings fun and inclusive. We would talk about different topics related to disability awareness, not just about disabilities, but even the way they portray disability in the media or different games that are accessible. We would talk about different topics like that. And then we would also have different events like a game night or a movie night virtually. And I feel like because we stayed doing that during the pandemic and constantly having meetings every other week, when we came back in person, everyone was more than excited to meet each other in person and more willing to try to do their best to come to the club. And it turns out we all ended up being great friends, and I'm still friends with most of them to this day. So I'm very,
Yes.
very happy.
And those friends of yours, some of them I still see around campus. And when I mentioned that you were going to be a guest today, it's just kind of amazing how many people know you from just all the ways that you were involved here. I mean, it's not even just the Disability Awarenesses Club, which is huge. The fact that you kept that club together, grew its membership during a time when students were really having a hard time through COVID with virtual learning and virtual connection. You kept that going. That was a huge, huge accomplishment. And then I loved listening to you talk about how excited everybody was when they finally got to be together in person. So you've definitely made an impact in that club and with your other groups, but you also were involved in a lot of other things here too, right? Like Latinos Unidos and International Student Club.
Yeah, I was involved in Latinos Unidos, which I actually was originally a member, and then I became a secretary at some point, and then a community outreach chair. And then for International Student Club, I was also the secretary of that club. And then I was a general member in the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, as well as I would join events for the Black Student Union and Pride Alliance.
That's so great. Adam, I want to call on you about this too. Now, I know that not only does disability services support students within their classes, their homework and stuff, but you also play a large part in helping students within their clubs, obviously, especially disability awareness. But what is some of the stuff that you've done with clubs here at JJC?
Yeah, the Disability Awareness Club is such a strong group of students and has been every year since I've been here. That's what Esli shared about the pandemic, I think, is really important, because that is where a lot of these groups can then struggle to come back on campus. Keeping that momentum, I think she's right, has really sustained the health of that group. They are a wonderful group of students to connect and partner with, because they are really passionate about educating the community about what the experience is like for people with disabilities. And so when we can help them, for example, one of the things, I'll give you one really good example of what we did to partner with them. I believe it was last year, is we have a brailing machine. We gave them the brailer last year to give students their name in Braille, so they can put it on things.
Oh,
it was an opportunity for students to start to have this experience of what it's like for those who would use Braille, right? And so the things that we can do to help bring their awareness projects to life, we're going to do. Places that we can go and speak for them when they need. They set up, this was about 2 years ago, we had a panel with engineers from a construction company to discuss ADA accessibility in physical spaces.
Wow.
So they not only did they set that up with DEI, but then they invited myself, the wheelchair users, to attend to discuss what that experience is. Because as important as it is for us to apply help, it is equally as important to apply education, because there are still a lot of misunderstandings about what disability is and what it is not.
Yes. And Esli, you mentioned to me that is something that is incredibly important to you, is trying to sort of fight that stigma that you feel still exists on campus. Can you speak more to that, how you try to alleviate that?
Yeah, I feel like, especially in Disability Awareness Club and I feel like in Disability Awareness Club and talking to classmates, I was hearing different people talk about how they didn't want to necessarily talk to disability services because they were nervous that they were going to get looked at a certain way. They were afraid that if they got seen in the disability services office, that people would know that they needed extra support. So I know within the club, I motivated some people myself, some of the students, to go to disability services and ask for different services, especially when they were signed up. They just were nervous to actually use the services because they weren't sure how they would look or if someone
Yeah.
would talk about them, especially the ones that were kind of more involved. So I think it's important to realize that they have the disability service office there to help students. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. Like us students, we're the ones that make that office run. So in
Yes.
order for it to run, they need to try to not worry about what others think and just worry about that they're getting the support they need to be successful.
Absolutely.
The fear that students have about being seen as an individual with a disability is legit. What Esli is describing here is something that we see in so many of the students we meet. You know, we have a really great transition program where we have a full-time staff member who is in our high schools every single day, meeting with juniors and seniors to help them begin to understand what the transition is going to look like. And in those discussions and in all that work we've done, you know, we have found out how hard it is in the K through 12 system for individuals with disability when it comes to understanding their own identity. You know, there is still a lot of bullying that happens towards individuals with disabilities, and that has a very strong effect on how an individual sees themselves. You know, if I feel like the outside world thinks that I am less than, it's very hard for individuals not to also feel that way.
Yeah.
A lot of what we try to do through the education about disability is to begin to help people better understand the population so that maybe we can start to change the way individuals with disabilities are being treated in our schools, because it's something that's going to be really important. One of the big things we're doing this year is we are hosting an empowerment workshop for freshmen and sophomores in high school with disabilities, where not only we are going to begin to help them reshape the way they see the word disability, but we're going to be creating workshop space for them to bring back to their high school campus campaigns to educate their schools. So we're really making a lot of efforts to start to destroy that stigma that does hold a lot of students back from the things that Esli just described.
That's fantastic. I mean, starting in the K through 12 and trying to break that stigma early is so huge. And then the work that, Adam, your department, that students like Esli, the clubs are trying to do to sort of break that stigma. And like you said, educate. That's really what it comes down to, is just more education for people to understand. And I think that that is sort of what Esli now is trying to bring to Lewis as well. So as we said in the beginning, right now, Esli is a student at Lewis University, and I asked her initially just to talk to me a little bit about what they were doing, and she's bringing so much to disability awareness there. So Esli, talk a little bit about some of the things you're trying to get started up or expand on at Lewis University.
Yeah, so when I first started at Lewis University, I was actually told that I was the first student that was blind that went there. And it made me a little nervous at first because I knew that I would have to start over from being so used to what I did at JJC and kind of starting there. But once I met with the disability services there at Lewis, which they call them academic services, once I went there, I met with one of the ladies. Her name's Angie Martinez. She is one of the main ones that actually works on the accommodations and the services for the students that have disabilities. Once I met with her and I kind of told her my accommodations, she did tell me, I don't know what we can do. I don't know if we can support, but because of me knowing what I am capable of and what I did at JJC, I just kept telling her, like, I can let you know what I need and what we can do to make it happen. So from there, now they have extended time for me, which is something they had for all the students, but I get extended time on tests and even sometimes projects. And then they also give me a note taker, which I also had at JJC. But one of the new accommodations that I was able to get at Lewis that they didn't have is the ability to ask for the different accommodations within clubs. Like, for example, now their emails, they're sending the flyers. At first, they were sending the flyers with just images, and now they send the flyers with description. And that's something that I asked for because I wanted to start getting involved, and then like I can't see these pictures.
Yeah.
So they started to now like all around the school send the emails with description. And
That's wonderful.
they're also getting a braille printer, which they do have at JJC. It's called an embosser. They're going to be getting that, and I feel like that's going to be helpful. We actually have some new students at Lewis that are also blind and visually impaired. So I feel like by me asking for the different accommodations and services, it's helping them as well, because at the moment, I'm kind of like the main one that kind of needs these services because they're a little bit more high functioning in terms of their sight. But in case they need it, it's there. And then another thing is, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of people with disabilities. So I thought at least people weren't really like identifying it. And so I decided to start a disability awareness club at Lewis, but I actually decided to change the name because I didn't want to copy. So I wanted to call it Accessibility. So basically like accessibility, but accessibility. So giving everyone like access and the ability to be inclusive. And
That's
so
fantastic.
I just started it though. So it's now forming, but my goal is to make what I learned from being the president of Disability Awareness Club, or just being involved in Disability Awareness Club and spreading the disability awareness at Lewis. But my goal also is to, because I tried this at JJC, to make sure that I include people that like they don't feel like they have to have a disability to join. But again, to educate everyone that like we're all the same and just have different abilities.
Yeah. Adam?
I think Esli's example highlights how far we still need to go as a society. This is not a knock on Lewis by any means, because this has happened at every institution that I've worked at. I have seen so many students who have come forward, who have highlighted gaps in accessibility that institutions have. And because the student is there, they have instituted change that will happen for the next person and the next person and the next person after that. But it is 2024, and we still have students with disabilities that will come to institutions and highlight major gaps in accessibility that's there. And Esli's story speaks to why she's so incredible and so amazing and advocating not just for herself, but the next person, but it also shows us how far we still need to go as a society to continue to fight for accessibility in every space.
Absolutely. And Esli, you are an advocate for yourself, but you've also just been a huge advocate for other students, for the need for these resources. And I hope you realize what a big change that you made at JJC and the change that you're making at Lewis and just what you're doing for the students who will come after you. Adam, I want to give you a chance now, as I was able to talk about some of the new things that Lewis is able to do based on that. What are some new things JJC is trying to add or do to fill some of those gaps you mentioned?
It feels like the checklist of issues we need to address just keeps getting longer and longer, but we're going to chip away at it every day. The first thing that first thing off the top of my head to talk about is our After 22 program. In the state of Illinois, individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities after the age of 22 do not have a lot of programming that they can participate in. The state of Illinois is 49th in the country in spending on programming for these two particular communities of individuals. And so in order to provide more programming that not only provides recreational activity, but also job training that moves above entry level to provide individuals with opportunities to work in integrated work communities, we're looking to build programming and courses that they can take for, again, fulfilling the self, but also fulfilling the individual's desire to find more employment. And so we have 2 classes that will kick off in the spring. That'll be our pilots with the hope of really growing that over time. We also have we have a lot of students, especially students on the spectrum, who are really struggling socially at the school. Mm-hmm. And so we've developed our first group to help develop social skills for individuals with disabilities, to help them find ways to continue to connect with others, which has been a really great success this year. We're in
Wonderful.
our third year of a math program that we have made a lot of changes to. We have very high failure rates for individuals with disabilities in our developmental math programs. And so we have redesigned some of those math courses to help improve outcomes. We've seen about a 10 to 15% increase. We want to do better, and we need something that's a little bit more scalable. So we've changed some of it here and there, but we've had a great partnership with them as well. I think that's just some of the stuff that I think actually to really highlight all of it, the word partnership is what our office seeks. We have to partner with everyone because accessibility is not just our responsibility, it is everybody's responsibility. And we are here to help enable every office and group across the campus and community to be the advocate that they need to be in their space, because we can't be in all of those. As much as I would love to multiply myself and multiply my staff to be out in every single space, that's just not realistic. And so by enabling others through programs like the ones we're talking about can really begin to help shift that change for those.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Esli, you have said too that it really is about partnership. It was partnership here at JJC that helped you grow and do so many different things. And it's obvious that it's partnership at Lewis. I think one of the best things that you continually provide is just advice. That's what made you, I think, so popular in your groups, is that people came to you. They looked to you for that sort of thing. And so I typically end a lot of these podcasts by just asking what your advice is for future wolves in general with their goals, but then also maybe students who are in a situation like you were where they knew they needed support. What sort of advice could you offer them?
The advice I would say is you never know till you try. I always try to tell people that because we often have assumptions of what we think might happen, but you literally never know until you try. So if you know that you need support or you're going to need assistance with something, just give it a try. And like the worst you can hear is they can't do it. And then what you do is just figure out how you can do it. And then in terms of, I mean, I guess that can go for someone who's blind as well. But I know like being blind, there's all different types of levels of sight, and it can be scary. Like you might feel embarrassed or not want to because you want to feel like everyone else who can see. But I feel like if you just take a chance and try to see what can happen, you never know, like, even if you think you can see something, maybe having something read to you can be a lot easier and help you concentrate and just do things more efficiently. So I just feel like, honestly, taking a chance and giving it a try and just kind of seeing how it goes rather than not doing anything at all.
I think that's great advice. Great advice, as usual. Well, I don't want to let this episode end without talking about something that's really special, I think, to both of you. And obviously, this has to do with Disability Awareness Club and the Department of Disability Services. But we've decided that some of the things that need to fill these gaps that are missing, we can't always find the funding for those right off the bat. And I know that Adam says him and his team always have a running checklist of things they need. So the Disability Awareness Club and our committee through DEI is working very hard to find ways to raise money and do different things to help support disability services. So if everyone listening would like to mark their calendars, if you are local to JJC, on November 14th, we're going to be having an event that's called An Accessible Night Under the Stars. And if you listened to episode 2 and heard our wonderful Caitlin Lee talk about all the things the planetarium is doing, one thing I don't think we got to mention much of is that our planetarium is accessible, which is just a huge benefit that is in comparison to other planetariums in our area. We're just top notch. And so our event is going to be an accessible planetarium show with a reception following, and the proceeds will all benefit the Disability Services Fund and help Adam get more things off his checklist for students like Esli and the rest of our students that are coming here on the campus. So if you can save the date for that, we would love to have as many people in attendance as possible, but spaces are limited. So when you see that advertising, we will have it available at jjc.edu/planetarium. The link to that event will be on that page, as well as a list of other accessible shows that you can attend for free if you are local. So I would just want to thank both of you for being wonderful guests for episode 3 and for bringing just such wonderful awareness to a topic that's very important to us at JJC. And so, Adam, I'll say thanks to you first for giving us all of your expertise and sharing what's going on in your department.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And one last thing I just want to leave with everybody is be an advocate. be an advocate every day. Be an advocate
Yes.
in every space that you're at. Talk about disability. Don't be afraid to talk about disability. Support your family members, your community, any way that you can. We need more attention on the deficits that we as a state, as a country, and as a community still have to make up.
Yes, also great advice. And Esli, thank you so much for coming on to be so open, about what your needs were here at JJC. Thank you for being such an advocate to students here at Lewis and beyond. And we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for everything, and I'm so glad I got to be here.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Roots and Branches JJC Alumni Podcast. For more episodes, information, foundation events, and ways to give or get involved, visit jjc.edu/alumni.